that I finally got everything masked up. Masking out a car that's got a complete interior in it just to paint the dashboard is not an easy thing to do. I can tell you that right now. Your masking paper and tape doesn't want to stick to your interior stuff, and trying to keep everything clean is just, sometimes it's easier just to take everything out of the car. But we're not going to do that with this car, so we got everything masked up. Front end's covered. Edges of the doors are covered up where we might get some overspray. I got the roof covered. And I got plastic over the interior. And as you can see, it just does not want to stick to the headliner. So hopefully I won't get too much overspray into the back. I've got the dash covered up, which is something that whoever sprayed this last time didn't do. They just let the paint fly in the back side of the dash. And I get it. You're not going to see it once the dash is together. But when somebody else goes back in there like I did, you see paint overspray all over everything. It's all over the wires. It's all over the duct work for the defroster and the heater box and everything. It just looks like crap. And I don't like to do things like that. So I covered it up as best I could. The dash is really, really dirty. And I tried cleaning it, and I just can't get the tape to stick. That's why there's an open spot there where the heater controls go and where the steering column goes in. That one there where the ashtray goes is probably going to blow off as soon as I come across it with a gun. But the bigger openings, the glove box and the instrument cluster, they're covered up. So we're going to shoot the dash and the A-pillars because I want to make sure the paint matches right next to each other. Plus the A-pillars had some paint chips in them. And we'll get the repair piece that we did. We'll get some epoxy on that. So, what is the steps to getting something prepped for paint? Well, first thing we're going to use, we go around and we clean everything with a wax and grease remover. Then you go to a prep cleaner. And then for the bare metal areas, I always use an epoxy primer. And I'm using the PPG Omni products on this car. It's their lower line of paint products, which they're still good paint products. I use them quite often, especially doing interior stuff where I'm doing an all-over job. They're not great for trying to match colors, but if you're doing a complete paint change on something like on this interior where we got the color matched, and it should match pretty good, but there's always that chance that it's not going to. I've got enough paint to do the door tops later on if they need to be done. So bare metal, you go with your epoxy primer. That adheres to the bare metal and gives the rest of the paint something to bite. Then the next step is this sealer. This is a urethane, 2K urethane sealer that I'll cover everything that's going to get color on it with, so I've got a uniform base. And then the next we go with is the base color. Again, this is an Omni product, and it mixes 1:1 with reducer, and when it lays out it will dry to a flat finish. So to give it some protection and some gloss, we're going to use a Shopline brand Speed Clear so that it dries quickly, because I'm not doing this paint job in my booth. I want to try and get the paint to dry as quick as I can before any dust and dirt and bugs or anything else happens to fall in my paint. Being as most of the flatter surfaces get covered, like the top of the dash gets covered with the dash pad, it shouldn't be too bad. The A-pillars shouldn't get too much on them as far as dust. The face of the dash really shouldn't be too bad, because dust will settle on a flat surface but not on a vertical surface. So the choice on the clear was made just out of convenience. I can get this in a quart can I didn't want to have to buy a whole gallon of speed clear. I don't use it that frequently in my line of work. It's more for production body shops that do collision work. So that's the step-by-step procedure of getting everything painted. Remove your wax and grease, clean it, epoxy prime it. Now the epoxy primer will have to sit a half an hour, and then I can top coat it with the sealer. The sealer will have to set for a certain amount of time to flash off. And then I can go with my color coat and then the clear. So today we'll probably get the epoxy on, and then possibly get the sealer coat on it, and then tomorrow we'll lay on the color and the clear, and that'll leave this dash finished and have it ready for the front glass to go back in. I probably won't put the dash all the way back together. I'll put the steering column back in it, but being as I need to do the wiring in this car, I think I'm just going to leave the dash out so I can get all the wiring done on it next. So I'm going to put the camera on the tripod, go ahead and set it up on time lapse so you can see the paint mixing and what it takes to get everything ready to paint, and finally get to see me spray some paint. You've been watching me do a lot of metal work, so we'll get to see some paint going on a car. Alright, we're going to start getting our paint mixed up. We're going to start with the epoxy primer, and this is a black epoxy primer. I got thinking about what I may do to paint this with. You can use your epoxy primer as a sealer. So I'm going to lay the epoxy on all the bare metal areas first and look at how much more there would be to cover the rest of the dash. And if it's really not that much more area, I may just use the epoxy primer as my seal coat and then eliminate that gray sealer, dark gray sealer that I showed a few minutes ago. And that'll just put me one step closer to getting the color on the car. I'm going to use my small touch-up gun, being as it's a confined area and I'm spraying in the open shop. There's less overspray with this gun, so I'm going to go ahead and just use this gun on this job. It's not a big panel, smaller panel with smaller strokes, so the metal, the pearl that's in the color should flow out okay with this. But this will keep the overspray down too in the shop. So we're going to go ahead and get some paint mixed up. This paint mix is 2 to 1. That's 2 parts of the epoxy primer to 1 part of the catalyst. And I have these mix cups here. They come with graduated markings on them in different. This one's 4-1 to 2, 4-1 to 1 to 1, 4-2 to 1, so on and so forth. And here we have a 2 to 1 scale. So I'm going to pour in my black up to my desired amount under the 2 scale, and then add in my hardener on top of that on my 1 scale, and that'll give me my mix, proper mix for this for it to set up right and dry. Now, I've already put this in my paint shaker because it's been sitting around a while. Anytime you've had paint that's sitting, the solids like to settle to the bottom of the can, so you kind of got to get them mixed up really good. And we'll just take a stir stick and make sure we don't have any chunkies in the bottom. Feels good, looks good. So we'll go ahead and put that in there. And let's see, if I went to, how many ounces am I going to get? I get 10 ounces. I got an 8 ounce, I've got about a 10 or 12 ounce cup on my gun. So I think I can get to 10 ounces of ready to spray paint. So if I mix to my number 3 level, that should give me about 10 ounces of sprayable material. So I'll go ahead and give that a shot and see just where we get, how far we get with spraying that. I read an article one time in a Restorer's magazine on how to guesstimate how much paint you need for a specific area. On the side of this cup there are numbers, and each number is called a part. So the rule of thumb that this article said was that one coat on the size of a 65 Mustang trunk lid top side is about 1.5 parts of sprayable material. I thought, okay, I kind of know how big that is. So I've used that formula a few times when trying to figure out how much paint I need for panels, and it's pretty accurate. It's worked out to where sometimes I've mixed up the exact amount of paint that I needed, or I've had just a very small amount left over, because I'm telling you, paint today is not cheap, and the more paint you waste, the more money you're throwing in the garbage can, because once you mix it with a catalyst, the only thing you can mix up and leave mixed is your base color coats. You can reduce those and you can put them on the shelf and they're good until you open them up to use them again. But once you mix in a single stage or a primer or an epoxy with the catalyst, the hardener for it, you've got a certain amount of pot time on that paint, and it's going to harden up, and that's going to be it. You can't use it after that. I don't care if you seal the can or what. It'll harden in that can. Now it might take longer to harden inside the can, but it will harden, and you can't use it. So the more accurate you can get with your mixes, the less money you're going to spend on paint, because the less waste you're going to have with leftover paint. Alright, so I got this mixed 2-to-1. I'm going to go ahead and get it poured in the gun, and I'm going to set the camera up on time-lapse again and let you watch me spray the epoxy. I got the dash and epoxy primer, steering column, and the glove box door. So we're all set for paint tomorrow. Since the dash was almost completely covered, I just went ahead and coated the entire dash with the epoxy, and we're going to use that as the sealer coat. Also did the windshield frame all around where the new glass is going to set it, or the glass is going to set into, is all primed with epoxy. So it's got a good base on it for the new seal strip to go in it. I haven't decided if I'm going to do a urethane bead, a sealer in there, or just go back with the original rope type sealer. And here's the glove box door. We're going to do both sides of it, so the front and the back side are the same color. Whoever painted it last time did not paint the inside of it. So we've got this all painted. Yeah, the body work isn't perfect, but the dash pad covers 95% of the top of this dash. So I wasn't overly concerned with making it, you know, pretty. But where you see it at is going to be nice. You won't notice the line. Remember, the line was, the patch panel came in right here. So you won't see that. So we should be good to go for tomorrow. I'm going to let this set overnight. Usually with epoxy primer, you've got 7 days where you can paint on top of this primer, either your primer, your fill primer, or go on with a color coat, and you don't have to sand this. So depending on what the temperature is, right now it's about 80 degrees out here, and that's the recommended spray temperature, and that's the recommended temperature that gives you the longest period of working time also. So anything over the 7 days, they recommend you rescuff it, give it one more coat of epoxy or a sealer coat, and then do your final paint coats on top of that. So we're going to let this set up overnight so it's good and dried off, and then we're going to lay on the base color and the clear tomorrow, and that will leave this dash finished and leave it so the windshield can go back in. I've got to get some new clips for the trim and a couple more of these studs here that hold the trim. They have screw-in trim clip studs that you can get, so I need two more. I need one for here, I need one for the other side. So we'll have to pick a couple of those up, get those installed, and then the windshield can go back in it with a new sealer strip in it, and this car can go back outside until we're ready to move on to the next phase of work in this. Alright, it's the next day and we've got the epoxy on the car. It's sat overnight, so I know it's good and dry. We're going to go ahead and get our color mixed up. So what we want to do, this gets mixed 1-to-1. It's one part of your base coat, one part of your reducer, and the reducers come in various temperature configurations depending on how hot or cold it is out. It'll make the paint either dry quicker or slower. I tend to use a medium year-round. I have pretty good heat here in the shop, so I'm able to get away with using a medium temp reducer pretty much all year round, except when it gets really hot in the summertime and I happen to be painting something. I may get a hot temp reducer, so it will slow down the drying rate a little bit. It lets the paint flow out a little better the longer you can let it go. So when I had this paint mixed up, I got a pint's worth of the color, and they mixed it up in a quart can. One, because it was trying to see if the color was going to match right to what I needed, so in case he had to fudge the color one way or the other, he wanted to have room in the can, which worked out for me because I can dump my reducer right straight into this can, and I don't have to worry about getting a cup dirty, and I can just take what I need out of the can. Now, like I was saying yesterday, once the base color coat paint is mixed with the reducer, it can sit in the can on the shelf, you know, for years. I've got paint in my cabinet that's been in there for 10 years. You pull it out, shake it up really good, and you can still use it. So what we're going to do is with the Omni brand line of the paint, I tend to go a little bit under the 1-to-1 ratio, maybe about 10% under on the reducer, because the Omnis tend to run a little bit thin. They don't have as much pigment and binders in them as the Concept line does, which is the better line of PPG's paints. So I will go a little bit under on the reducer just so that it doesn't get too thin and want to flow out too much and you get runs or sags in it. So we'll go ahead and we'll get this mixed up. So I'm just going to dump the paint right in there. I want to get some holes put in the can. And I just knock holes in here around the can so that any paint that sits in that lip can drain back into the can easy. Like I said, I can just mix this right in the can. Normally I would fill this all the way to the top, but I want to leave it just shy of being 1-to-1 mix. So it looks about good there. And we'll go ahead and put the lid back on. I'm going to put this, since I've got it mixed in my can, I can use my paint shaker to really mix this up well. Otherwise, if you're in a mixing cup and you're doing it 1-to-1, use a stir stick, mix everything up good. But I'm going to go ahead and put this in my paint shaker for a few minutes, get everything mixed up really good, and then we can go ahead and get some paint in the cup and start putting it on the dash and steering column and get everything with some color on it. Alright, I gave that can a good shake in the paint shaker. So we're ready to fill up the gun, start laying some color on. You can see the color on that, it's that light blue. It's not a factory GM color from '65. This actually turned out to be a Mazda color. Go figure. But that's what color it is. So we got our strainer here to dump our paint into the gun. So we'll fill up the gun. And I found from spraying yesterday, I mixed up 10 ounces of primer and got 2 good heavy coats on everything I needed. So I probably can get away with about 7 to 8 ounces of color, and that should cover everything. That should give me 2 good coats on everything. But like I said, with this pre-mixed, I don't have to really worry about mixing up the right amount of paint. I can take some or leave some. I can put it back in the can if I got leftover. So I like that fact about the base colors, is they don't harden up. Before we paint everything, we're going to use a tack cloth just to go over and wipe off any dust or debris that may have fallen on something overnight. It is extremely windy here today. Probably not the best day to be painting, but I need to get this finished up. So we're going to go ahead and get the color on, try and get the clear coat on. If the wind is getting to be too much here this afternoon, I may wait until tomorrow morning and do the clear coat. Hopefully I can get it in tonight. So let's go ahead and get some paint in our cup. Alright. Yeah, it's got the cup about 3/4 of the way full. That should be plenty for what we need to get done. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll get the camera moved and get it set up, and go ahead and start wiping the dash down and laying the color on. First coat on, and you want to give it about 15 minutes between coats. Let the first coat set up nice, and the first coat goes on. You just kind of mist it over. You're not looking for coverage, but it's your coat that's going to give you something for your next couple coats to stick to. This is probably going to take 3 coats to get the desired color out of this paint. Like I said, this paint doesn't have the binders and the pigments in it that the Better Concept line does. So it takes a couple more coats usually to cover, especially with a pearl like this is. It's kind of translucent, this paint. So we'll give it a few minutes and let it set up. Then we'll lay on another coat, see what it looks like. If it needs a third, we'll do a third coat, and then it'll need to set up about 20 minutes to half an hour, and then we can lay on the clear coat. Alright, take two. The joys of recording everything. My battery went dead when I mixed the paint the first time, so I'm going to run through this all again. What I'm using is the shop line brand. This is a lower line. It's more for production collision shops, quick jobs. Saves money on your clear coats. It's a little cheaper, but it's pretty good paint. I'm not really sure how strong the UV protection is in it, but for things like dashboards, interior pieces, it's a good paint to use. This is a speed clear, which means that it's going to dry quick. Typical dry time, dust free within 10 minutes, tack free where you can touch it within 20 minutes, and it's usually good dry within an hour. Depends on the paint, but most of them within an hour or two they're good and dry, whereas other paints will typically take 12 to 16 hours to set up. This paint is mixed 4:1 to 1/2, which means 4 parts of the clear, 1 part of the activator, and optional 1/2 a part on the reducer. Now I'm not going to do any reducer in this because I've used this paint before and the flow out is pretty good on it without any reducer in it, so I don't need it any thinner than it already is. So we're going to forego the thinner in mixing this. Now, like I said, my battery went dead when I mixed the first time, so I already mixed up 1 part and shot the clear coat on the dash. I put 1 coat on so far. My first mix, I had gone to my 4 graduation mark, which gave me approximately 4 ounces of sprayable material. And by looking in the gun, from where I filled it, I'm down about 2/3. So I'm not going to mix to the 4 mark this time. I will mix to, I'm going to go to the 2 mark, and that should give me enough material to spray a good second coat on it. And that's all we're going to do is 2 coats on this. So we'll go ahead and put in 2 parts of our clear. A little bit too much in there. Well, we'll just have to deal with that. I don't want to take any of that paint and put it back in the can because I've already mixed in this cup, which means it's got some hardener in it. And if I put that back in the can, it could cause this to start to activate. I don't want to take the chance that it will or will not. So we'll just kind of guesstimate how much hardener we need. Be a little skosh over the 2 mark. Put that in. And that should be good. Again, we're going to skip the reducer part of it. Mix your clear and your hardener up good. Make sure it's well mixed so that the activator reacts properly in the paint. As soon as I've got this mixed and in the gun, I can go back to shooting my second coat, because your flash time between coats on a speed clear is pretty quick, mainly because it dries quick. So you gotta be on the ball with what you're doing when you're shooting a speed clear. You gotta be ready to keep going. Fill up my cup. And I got about a third of a cup here or so, maybe half a cup clear in here. That should be plenty to get me a second coat. I'm going to go ahead and get my mask back on, get back to spraying. Okay, second coat of clear on. Give you a look at what we got here. So we got a nice shine on our dash. Color looks good, laid out nice and even on it. Yeah, it's got some dirt in it on the top, of course. We're spraying outside the booth. That was to be expected. But again, where this is at, where all the dirt's at, dash pad covers all of this. The only thing you're going to see is the speaker opening, the defroster opening, and a very small bit here in between where the ribbon seal will go for the windshield and the dash pad, so really not going to notice it. And I didn't worry about covering this too much with clear because this is all going to get sanded down again when the car gets painted. Same thing with the bed where the front windshield seal is going to sit. The epoxy primer is adequate for coverage there. We're just looking for rust prevention, so I didn't need to really get any paint on it. We'll get paint down inside of this upper edge once the car gets painted because the trim won't be on when it gets painted. So there you go, that's everything painted up on the dash. We've got the steering column done. That came out really nice. Nice and even coats on there. We're going to clean up that stick that somebody painted last time for the turn signals. And this was done black the other day, so this will look really nice done properly. As you get a nice steering wheel on it too, this will really look nice. Probably want to end up replacing this turn signal stalk too because the chrome on it's really not very good shape. Glove box door now matches inside and the outside. We'll get the trim piece back on it. We'll get the screw. We'll get a screw to replace the one that was missing for the lock so it doesn't want to fall out anymore. Yep. So this is pretty much going to be it for this video on the Chevelle. I've got some parts I want to get before I put the dash back together on this, just because it's a part. I'm going to put a new glove box in it and maybe a new light for the glove box. We're going to wait to put the instrument cluster back in because the wiring needs to be replaced in this car, and I got to get some clips for the windshield moldings. I got 2 of those that I need to put in yet before the glass can go in it, so I don't know when I'm going to get over to the supply house to get those. Maybe a week or 2 before I can get them, so I want to get this video edited and get it out. So I'll end this part of this video here. Finally got to see some finished paint work going on here. You've seen me replace a lot of sheet metal so far and cut out a lot of rust and do some finish sanding on primer, but haven't seen me lay any paint on anything, so I wanted to make sure I got some paint on this so you could see me lay some paint down on some parts here. So we're going to finish up on this one and probably going to go back to work on the Challenger and start getting it ready for some new panels to go on it. And then we've got we're just going to keep rotating around with the cars we got here, projects we got. The old Mercedes needs to get some loving again. It's been a few weeks since we worked on it, so we got to get some more panels replaced on it. And we're just going to keep moving along. Again, thanks to everybody for watching. The zombie video I posted the other day has just blown up. It's had over a couple hundred, close to 400 views in 2 days, so that's awesome. I love it. You guys seem to be really interested in that project, so I'm going to try and keep that one going as much as I can. And to keep everybody else's projects going too. Everybody wants their cars done. They all want them done at the same time, so everybody's got to wait. But you guys seem really interested in that project, so I'm going to try and get as much work done on it as I can over the next couple of months so you can see that car start to come back to life. So again, share the videos, hit that like button, hit that dislike button, leave me some comments. If there was something that I didn't cover here in my painting that you had questions about, leave me a comment and I'll try and answer it. And next time I do some paint work, maybe I'll make sure that I cover it a little bit more thoroughly as to what you were questioning, so you can see it rather than just not read it and hear it from me. So yeah, appreciate it. Keep watching, and I'll keep bringing you more videos. Thanks again.